back to our second video in a series about Accreditation 360. If you haven't watched the first one, we invite you to go to our website, mslhealthcare.com, click on the link at the top and watch that. It's a little over an hour. Apologize for that, but we cover a lot of the basics about what's going on with the Joint Commission. This is the first in a series of videos that we're going to do. We're going to keep them a little bit shorter, about 30 minutes this time, where we're going to talk about the new process and specifically, easy for me to say, the new process. I can't even say it. The new survey process guide. So I'm really thankful to have some of the brightest people I know on the screen with me today: Ramona Cheek, Monica Stone, and of course Sue McLaughlin, a partner at MSL. So we welcome you here. So we're just going to jump right into it. So let's talk a little bit about the process and what it's going to be like when the surveyors arrive, the arrival and the pre-planning stage.
Well, one of the things I'd just like to point out is that I do think that there is a new emphasis on process. I mean, the survey activity guide has even been renamed to the survey process guide, and it's gone from a little bit under 200 pages to over 600 pages. So there's a lot of processes that they're covering in the guide. I think one of the things you'll hear is that there are no new standards, no new EPs, no new CMS tags. Um, but what is different is the emphasis that they have on what is there. For those people who have been able to take a deeper dive, just at the logistics, just at the overall picture of things, will notice that the numbering of the standards or the EPs in the standards have changed, and now most of them, the majority of them, start with 11.010101. Well, that corresponds to the CMS tags, sightings and tags. And so that was very deliberate. And if you're looking at the survey process guide right now, you'll see that it's renamed, it's in the format of the modules, which are named after the CMS chapters and not the Joint Commission standards. So all that, you just kind of starts you wondering about, well, what is it that they're doing? And I think that our opinion at MSL is that Joint Commission is going to become much more CMS like in its approach to how it surveys, which is a little bit different than the Joint Commission traditional approach that they've had, where it's been a little bit more education, a little bit more friendly. I think with CMS, it's down to business. It's about checking the boxes and the checklist and making sure that you've done it, and not a lot of interactions with the organization. So we'll see how this all plays out. And I'm sure as the Joint Commission surveyors get educated on the new survey process guide, that we'll have more information. But one of the first things when you look at the survey process guide is that there's a new section that's called confirmation of eligibility for survey. And that is brand new. So it says upon the surveyor's arrival, and before they can even begin the survey, they have to confirm that certain things exist. Of those is an average daily census, the scope of services under the CCN, the hospital's license, the overall plan and budget in effect, the evidence that the organization maintains clinical records on all patients. So that's spelled out, and that's different than what's been required before. Medical staff bylaws, which they've always asked for. A lot of the stuff they've always asked for, but the emphasis now that you're looking and reviewing this before the survey can even begin is new. Evidence that every patient is under the care of a physician. That requirement was never pulled out before. Evidence of 24-hour nursing service that's rendered or supervised by an RN, and that either an LPN or an RN is on duty at all times. That's not a new requirement. Again, it's the timing and the fact that you have to validate that before the survey begins. And then the utilization review plan and the discharge planning process. So what we can't talk to right now is why the emphasis on this before the eligibility of the survey. And our opinion is because they're becoming more CMS like in the Joint Commission is becoming more CMS like in the way that they approach the survey now.
So just for, I'm a engineering type, so just for my clarification, I'm a little thick-headed. If they miss any one of those keys, they're not eligible. The survey's over.
Well, that's what the implication is. There is nothing that says if any of this is missing. That is not written, but it does say that they need to confirm that these things exist before the survey can begin.
Okay, great. So I guess certainly that changes what you expect from the opening conference, right? So,
Correct.
how would that be different, do you think? I know we're speculating, but what would y'all's speculation be at this point?
Well, for one, I think that's going to delay the start of the opening conference a little bit because by the time they show up and they go through all of those documents, it's going to take them a little bit of time to do that. I'm not sure in what depth they'll be reviewed, but that certainly would take some time once the surveyors arrive.
And I would also say what the opening once the opening conference has after they've the surveyor, the lead surveyor has confirmed that everything's in place. Even the opening conference, they are emphasizing things that have never been emphasized by Joint Commission. For example, there is an emphasis that all interviews will be conducted privately with patients, staff, and visitors. And there is a new emphasis that's being given on the importance of surveyors being able to interact and observe direct caregivers. So I think that unless the expectation of Joint Commission now is unless there's a really good reason why you don't want Joint Commission around or to observe something, that the expectation is that you make every effort to let them observe and that they will be observing alone so that they're not going to usually Joint Commission has had, the escorts or the scribes with them in the room. And now it seems like the interviews with the patient families, and with the staff are all going to be done privately, which has always been the way that CMS has conducted it. Now, with staff, if the staff prefers to have someone there from the organization, then they will grant that wish and have someone there. But their expectation is that they're going to be alone in conducting these interviews, and that's a little bit different slant than we've had in the past.
It'd be interesting to measure how often staff would prefer to have someone from the organization in those interviews versus not. I just would be I'm just
Yeah.
thinking it would just be interesting to see.
Well, I think it's wise of an organization to coach their staff that if they are selected to be interviewed, to coach the staff to say, I prefer to have a hospital leader with me, and that way there is an extra set of ears there to listen to the conversation. But I think that's a good coaching point for organizations to give their staff, to remind them they have the right to request them a leader to be present and to encourage them to do so.
Yeah, that to me, I think makes a lot of sense. It certainly would be a way to avoid conflict potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Not I don't think there would be any intentional misrepresentation of what's said, but there's always that concern about what you thought you heard versus what was actually said. So,
Correct. You know,
yeah,
Another change with the opening conference that I noted is they give a little bit more direction on where they want that initial conversation to go. They want to hear about how the organization's governed. They want to hear about how the organization focuses on performance improvement and what that process is. So they give a little bit more, I think, a more narrow direction on what they want in that initial conversation at the opening than they have in the past. So, historically, way back when, we've gone from having big fancy presentations and the dog and pony show, really diving into a lot of detail about the organization. And I get the sense in the news survey process guide that they want it to be a much more targeted and specific conversation than before.
One more thing I'd like to add to the opening conference. First of all, something old, but just keep it top of mind so that it's not overlooked, is the safety briefing is still there. That safety briefing that we've had to do for a couple of years now is still required. One other thing, though, that's interesting, what they want for the documents that are available at that opening conference is they are asking for floor plans that basically show the layout of the hospital. Now, this is not life safety drawings. Life safety drawings are of course, still required, but what they want at the opening conference is the actual floor plans for the building. So something else to make sure that you have there.
Okay, great. Well, and that's something, I mean, I'd be interested to see if there's a surveyor preference over, a set of life safety drawings pretty adequately illustrates the layout and department relationships and things of the hospital. But that's something I guess we'll see how that unfolds, whether they'll fly or whether you need a separate set of documents or not. So, um,
Yeah, and it was interesting before what they asked for was a map of the organization, and now they're saying they want a floor plan. So that seems to be a little bit more specific about what it is that they're looking for.
yeah, that's an interesting distinction. I don't know if it's semantics or if it actually means they want more detail in terms of space allocation and that sort of thing. So hopefully we'll get some clarity on that as we get a little bit closer to the end of the year. And it's going to be really. I found out this morning that one of our clients is likely going to be surveyed with probably January, February. So I'm somewhat excited and somewhat terrified. I'm looking forward to getting the feedback from that. But let's talk about survey activity list and the descriptions of that. I mean, what's changed there?
Well, one of the things is that well, I'll go back to they made a point of emphasizing that for Joint Commission accreditation, owned and contracted laboratory services must be either accredited by Joint Commission or by one of their cooperative partners, either CAP or COLA or ASHI. And if an organization is solely accredited by state inspection or AOA or AABB, that does not meet their accreditation policy, and so that they will be making arrangements for them to be accredited by Joint Commission. And they've never spelled that out before for laboratory services either. So that's something that's a little bit new too. It's a nuance, but it's new.
That's kind of a big deal,
It can
potentially.
be, yeah, yeah,
If
it
you're one
can
of those
be,
labs, it'd be a big deal. I mean, if you're not, it's not. But
yeah.
Another change that I think is really worth noting is that they are not having as many system tracers as they have in the past. So they're not going to have an infection control tracer or a PI tracer or a medication management tracer or infection control. They're going to look at those processes during the tracer activity while they're out on the units. So they've eliminated those specific sit down sessions with groups of people, and they're going to look for the evidence and talk to the staff and talk to the leaders while they're out on the nursing units, on the patient care units. So, what that means is that organizations are going to have to be prepared to send the experts, their infection control professional or their pharmacy leader or whomever that the surveyor requests to the unit to discuss whatever process it is or policy that they want to review on the patient care unit versus doing it all during an hour-long sit-down session. So that's a significant change, I think, that organizations will need to adapt to.
I agree with you, Monica, because I think too that, I mean, there is a possibility that more than one surveyor are either talking about infection control or pharmacy. So those persons or those departments are having to respond to multiple surveyors at different times, which is going to be a little bit different and maybe a little bit more, could potentially be a little bit more burdensome for them to be where they need to be when they need to be there. So I think
So
it's going to be interesting.
it'll be a good
yeah,
opportunity to get that too deep leadership ready.
That's right.
Have more than one
That's
person
right.
that can answer the questions. So
so
to
do
be
you
clear,
think?
they are still going to have the medical staff session, the competency session, the emergency
Right.
management session, and there's one more.
They've switched the name of the leadership session to the organization governance, administration, and management session. So that's the other one that they will have.
So
So
those
much
those four
easier
they'll
to
still have
just
planned. What was that, Steve?
It's so much easier to say than leadership session.
Yeah, it sure was, wasn't it?
Fill up the agenda right there. So I'm curious, based on what you just said, do you think life safety physical environment surveyors will be involved in infection prevention discussions and evaluations?
I do, particularly,
I do
when they
too.
come across, the HVAC questions in sterile areas, the um, in pharmacy. I mean, any of those construction areas. I think they're going to ask people to go to the site instead of discussing it in a room.
That would be
Sorry,
awesome.
Sue.
Uh,
That should have left that up to you to answer. Do you have anything to add to that?
that's all right. You know, but there are a couple of other nuances during the building tour for the physical environment as well. First of all, when you look in the surveyor process guide and you can see the forms that the life safety surveyor will use for the building tour, they are remarkably like the CMS forms now. Almost word for word, I would say, but they're very close to what CMS is using. So that's a whole different format in the way that they are looking at things. Um, so and they have the K tags or whatever tags that apply on that form along with the Joint Commission requirements. So, and of course, the Joint Commission requirements are all under the life safety, the one standard in EP that says you have to comply with the life safety code. The other thing that I want to mention, and this actually came out in the recent or in the July edition of Perspectives, is it says there that the life safety surveyors are going to visit all outpatient buildings. Now, I've got an FAQ into Joint Commission right now, but the question is, is this all buildings on the accreditation certificate, which would probably be my guess on this. But then the question's been asked of me, what about buildings that we own and we maybe might rent to private physician practices? Are they going to go there? And we don't really have the answer to that, but I would guess it's the accreditation certificate, but we'll see.
Yeah, it seems like
I would
that
say
would
the only clue that we have is that they make very clear that it's those areas that bill under that CCN number that are going to be eligible for survey. So if those
Yeah.
private, if they're not owned or not billed under the hospital CCN number, they're not going to be eligible.
so
So,
just
That would
for
be my guess as well, but
yep,
we shall
yep. And
see.
they do emphasize that in a couple different places.
so just one more clarification then. So if we've got like a dental practice and we're renting a space in a strip mall somewhere, but we're billing that under that CCN, it's eligible.
That
So
is
even
correct.
though we have no real control, and I'm speaking about one particular place, please don't rat me out, that has no real control over the environment and how that building is built or maintained other than that little space they're in, they're going to survey it.
Yeah, because they're billing for the service. They're
Yeah.
billing
Yeah.
the pay. Yeah, absolutely. They'll be eligible.
I mean, I think that's another thing that's, it's not new, but it's new and kind of new and it's big, potentially.
Well, yeah, I mean, previously, I think that, except for the ambulatory surgery centers, I think that from a whole list of buildings, several were chosen and some were not chosen. So if they're going to go to all of them, that's a whole different story.
It's going to be interesting to see how they pull that off logistically. Because, I mean, I know some organizations have many, many spaces and they're spread out across large geographic regions.
And they've said that they may bring in an extra life safety surveyor to do that.
And they've also indicated that those assignments will be made before the surveyors get to the organization. So that's part of the pre-planning off campus. So it seems like there's some homework, something that team leader is doing. So some assignments will be made before they even reach the day of survey. So that's going to
So
be interesting too.
you mentioned the team leader. It reminded me of a question I wanted to ask earlier, and that was who's going to be doing this, the preliminary document review, the certification that they're eligible for survey, would that be the team leader more than likely that will come in and
I
do?
would say it's more than likely the team leader that's been assigned that role, right?
I meant to ask that way back then, but better late than never. So um,
Well,
let's talk. Go
one
ahead,
more thing. I
Monica.
was just going to point out that the discussion about the additional sites that they may be visiting raises the question of, are they going to be bringing in a larger team than they have historically, much like CMS does, because of the not only the volume of buildings that they may be visiting, but also the level of detail that's evident in the survey process guide. Will the survey teams be larger in order to accomplish the work of the survey?
It almost seems like it's going to have to
Yeah.
be, I mean, unless they hired the Flash. I don't see our way around that. But it's a good question. So, well, since we're talking about the physical environment, Sue, we've kind of kept you in the corner for a while here. I wanted to just give you a chance to talk a little bit in broad terms about some of the changes there. And I know there's been a lot of questions about some specific things, but
Right. Well, let me just first reemphasize something that's very, very important, that we talked about actually in our previous webinar. Everything that you've been doing in the physical environment, you still have to keep doing. Absolutely everything. Now, some of it's rearranged. A lot of it is rearranged, and be sure to look under the NPG, the National Performance Goals chapter, because there are things in there for emergency management, for utilities, for workplace violence, for life safety. So don't neglect to read through that chapter. But the other thing that I want to mention is when you go to the appendix material in the survey process guide, there is a hospital document checklist. And it says at the beginning, before they get into any nitty gritty of exactly what they're looking for in which document, it says that you have to have your EOC performance monitoring data, your management plans, and 12 months of your committee meeting minutes. That is in what they're going to be doing with the document review. So even though there isn't a standard that says thou shalt write management plans, you still need to keep your management plans. In reality, that is, I think, a really good practice to have because it pulls your program together. It ensures that you're covering all the bases. It ensures that you're following up on problems, failures, user errors, and all this other stuff that we've been doing for years. And, again, I think the EOC committee that we've had forever really is important in order to implement things on a hospital-wide basis or on an organization-wide basis, and it gets a lot of different viewpoints into the discussion. So just because there isn't a standard that says you need this stuff, you still need the stuff.
yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to one of the things we talked about a lot, which is doing a risk assessment when there's challenges within the built environment or even operationally. In order to really have a valid, in my mind, valid enforceable risk assessment, you've got to have a multidisciplinary group that agrees that we've identified all the risk and we've taken the steps necessary and that are feasible to mitigate that risk. I mean, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I think in the absence of some type, whether it's environmental care committee, safety committee, whatever you call it, committee, you don't have the vehicle to really pull that off anymore. So maybe the opportunity is you get to broaden it a little bit too, and bring in like construction risk into that group, or performance improvement or whatever. But I think that maybe it opens the door a little bit to broaden the scope or narrowing the scope even. So I'm glad you clarified that because that's
Yeah.
that's been ping ponging back and forth about, oh, we don't need management plans anymore. Oh, wait, yeah, we do. No, we don't. Yeah, we do. And plus, like you said, I think it is absolutely best practice. Monica knows that I always try to get aviation into everything I talk about, and I think she resonates with that. But to me, the management plans are kind of a very wordy checklist. They're a good way of going through and saying, are we doing everything that we first of all, are required to do under the scope of the standards and the COPs, but more importantly, are we doing everything that we need to do to maintain and ensure this as much as possible, the safety of the patients, staff, and every other stakeholder in the organization? So,
Yeah,
um,
and to go one step further with that, while it says at the beginning of this document review that you need to have those documents available, it does not have anything that they are going to specifically say your safety management plan contains A, B, C, and D. It doesn't tell you what needs to be in it like it used to. But I think that what we've had for years is a really good model to keep your program together.
yeah, I do not disagree with that. Anything else that comes to mind, but for this particular discussion, I know there's a lot to unpack with this, with the process and the process guide.
Well, there's a whole lot around the document list. I don't know if we want to go ahead and discuss that now or not, but
Yeah, I mean, why don't we, on a high level, let's talk about it. We got a couple of minutes left. I promised 30, so I'm going to try to keep it to that. So maybe 5 minutes, something like
I've said my piece on the documents for today.
that.
Or
I'm
so
gonna,
you think, Sue.
well, just at a high level, I think that the way that they've arranged the documents, they're now, instead of just saying all this list of, 50, 60 documents plus have to be available upon arrival, they've now broken it out and actually said which ones are expected to be available upon arrival for the preliminary review, which ones are due by the end of day one, which ones are going to be looked at during survey activity, and which ones will be looked at during those specific tracer times that they're going to have, system tracer times. So that's a little bit different about the just the overall organization of the document list.
And what I would say, on cursory exam of what the list says, most of it remains the same, but there were some things that I thought were some subtle nuances. For example, the list of inpatients now includes the admission date, the attending physician, which are new requirements. That's not what they've asked for before with the list of inpatients. So they no longer require the source of admission or the length of stay. They are requiring a list of employees, and we haven't had that before with all the names, position, and their primary location of work. The other thing that we could not find that was asked before was a list of sites where there's medication compounding. That looks like that's a new request. And they really explicitly ask for a list of waivers and variances if they exist, that those are provided. So that those are. Oh, one more thing that was a little bit different is that they now want also a list of department or service leaders with location and area of responsibilities and phone numbers. So in some cases, they're asking for a little bit more information, and they want the information detailed in a certain way. So
So,
it's interesting.
what's your take on the employee list? I mean, I'm just curious what they would do with that information. I mean,
I don't know if it's just to cross reference it. I don't know if it's to see if they have enough. They make an emphasis on is there appropriate staffing in appropriate areas. So I don't know if that's part of it. I think it's too soon to call that.
yeah, I was kind of wondering if that was where they were going, but if it's the first thing they look at, I don't know how that you make a determination if the ratios are where you need them to be. But maybe there's something behind all that we don't know yet that we'll unpack here soon enough.
Well, and I think they might also just be asking for the list to be available. They might or might not use it, but we've known by when we've come on site and asked for certain lists that sometimes it takes a while to create or write the report to get that list. So they might just be requesting it up front just in case something comes up and they don't want to wait for them to be able to produce it.
So, do you think electronic versions of that will be okay? So,
Oh, yeah,
so
absolutely, I do. Yeah.
because I think most organizations are going to have a list in some kind of HR software. And here's the list, and
Yeah.
um, just wanted to clarify that is as soon as you print one, it's obsolete practically in this day and age. Um, so, any other
Yeah.
thoughts that you guys have for
Oh, just
about that?
just a teaser for a future session. Having requiring the list of employees might tie into some emphasis placed in the national performance goals on looking at the types of staff in areas that we haven't typically looked at in the past. So
Mhm.
teaser for a future session
Yeah.
that we
Well,
can
and
get
that's a
into more.
great segue, and I appreciate you doing that because one of the things I wanted to do to kind of close us down. And first of all, thank you all for your time today because I appreciate it and your expertise. And I know we're just throwing this stuff together and we're putting it out there in the hopes that if nothing else, we're calming some fears with people. It's like here, yeah, it's a big change, but we're all going to get through this. We're going to get through it together. It is our goal to do one of these every 2 weeks from now until as long as it takes to get this information out. So I would love to tell you this is the first of 3 parts or 4 parts where we're going to unpack this kind of process and process guide. But it's 600 pages. I'm not really sure how long it's going to take us to get through that, but we will do that. We're also going to be looking at what are the changes that are most critical to your as organizations that you want to start working on soon and get that information put together pretty soon. So again, thank you all for your time. We appreciate you attending. Appreciate our presenters for joining us today, and look forward to hearing from us here in the near future.